Hello and welcome to the Pod Awakens. My name is Jordan, and no co-host or guest with me today. We are just going to be catching you up on all of the latest Star Wars news. And for the podcast and where we go from here, I put out a little schedule on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I believe I did all of them on what it's looking like for this show going forward. So I guess we'll start with that at the top of the show. We haven't put out an episode in almost 2 months. We wrapped up our chronological Clone Wars watch. We wrapped up our Acolyte coverage, and we also did our lightsaber draft with our guests. It was a lot of fun. If you're not aware, this Pod Awakens is part of a larger podcasting network created by myself and my friend Logan, Logjam Media. Since then, we've had more people enter the fray for Logjam Media as hosts and co-hosts across our various channels. So during that time, I wasn't MIA, just kicking back. We were covering over on our latest podcast, The Fantasy Folk. That's our newest show over there with Ron, who's frequented on this podcast as well. And you'll see him again during Skeleton Crew. We were covering Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, and we're talking fantasy stuff over on the Fantasy Folk. Over on our Marvel podcast, To the Infinity Saga and Beyond, I just wrapped up with Casey McGeorge, our Agatha coverage this week, which is why I'm now kind of able to make this episode. I'm done discussing Lord of the Rings and Agatha, which were going on at like the same time, as well as covering over on Elseworlds, our DC fan podcast, covering Penguin and Superman and Lois, which is still ongoing until we get up to Creature Commandos, which premieres after Skeleton Crew. A couple days after Skeleton Crew. And then that does, Logan and I, of course, do the soccer podcast over on Stateside Soccer Show, where we talk Major League Soccer and U.S. men's national team, stuff like that. So that is in, MLS is in its playoff stage right now. So I've been having doing a lot of that. Also, season 2 of our films for the very first time, where I sit down with Casey McGeorge and we each alternate showing each other a movie. That season 2 of the podcast just kicked off on October 25th. So we've had a lot of stuff going on. So I know what you're thinking. If you're just a Star Wars fan, you're like, why do I care about all that stuff? I just want to kind of say, I'm not trying to, go missing, but we didn't have a lot of Star Wars stuff to talk about. But we're gearing up. We are gearing up for more Star Wars discussions, as Skeleton Crew will be, of course, one of the weekly Skeleton Crew recaps are going to be coming on this podcast. The 2-episode premieres December 3rd here on Disney Plus. So Ron and I, and maybe some other guests, we'll see, will be talking Skeleton Crew. The trailer just released for that. We'll briefly talk about that in a second. Then the other thing that's upcoming, before we get to Skeleton Crew, we teased on our chronological Clone Wars that I'd be showing Tales of the Jedi to Logan. That is going to be recording in the middle of the month, so probably premiering before Skeleton Crew premieres. You'll have our Tales of the Jedi watch. Probably just one episode discussing all 6 episodes of Tales of the Jedi with Logan, his first watch, my rewatch of the show. As that will lead into our next show. After Skeleton Crew is wrapped up, the Bad Batch binge will begin. The Bad Batch binge will begin in about January, I guess, once late January, whenever Skeleton Crew wraps up, we'll start having Bad Batch binge going. Logan and I are going to start recording those soon to kind of get a head start. as we are one to do. We'll be talking about it just like if you weren't around for Chronological Clone Wars and didn't watch that or listen to those. It was his first watch of the Clone Wars. It was my first time through chronological order. I'd watched them in the release order before. And, it was a fun way to revisit it. Bad Batch doesn't have that type of gimmick. We can't really, we're watching them in release order. But it'll be Logan's first watch of the Bad Batch, my second watch of the Bad Batch. And we'll be doing those in episodes, batches as well. So we'll kick off with the premiere as one episode because it's a long one. And then we'll go into, I think like the next few weeks after that have like 2 episodes we'll talk about. Then we get up to like 4 episodes at some point a week. And then I'd say actually most of the time we're in 2 to 3 episode blocks for Bad Batch binge. And that, that won't take as many weeks as the Clone Wars. And then the way I'm kind of picturing of doing this is, so we did Clone Wars, and then we're doing Tales of the Jedi, then as like a palate cleanser. Then we're going into Bad Batch. We're going to do the same thing with them. Bad Batch, palate cleanser with Tales of the Empire, and then get into Rebels. It's kind of how I see that going. So that's going on, and then what was the? Oh, I think that was it. Tales of the Jedi, yes. Skeleton Crew next, and then over the course of like January to however many weeks it takes, doing Bad Batch binge, and then of course building up to Andor season 2. That's really the only show that we're having next year, unless if Celebration in April, I think it is, in Japan, if they come out with news, announce a new animated series. I'm kind of thinking we're going to get a new animated series announced at least. It may not be dropping this year or next year. It might be a 2026 show or something, but that's kind of my thought. But unless they do like another one of these seasons of Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Jedi, or Tales of something, I could see that. It'd be like a good May 4th drop, if they're working on something secret. Okay. So that's kind of the plan for the show going forward and what we'll be talking about. So I'm really excited to kind of be getting back into this stuff. We took a nice little break from recording Chronological Clone Wars. We recorded some of those so far in advance, and we were just, doling them out while I was, dealing with having a newborn. My wife and I have kind of adjusted with having the newborn and being able to fit in some of this stuff. So this will be good. But other than, Andor season 2, I don't think we have anything next year. So we'll, of course, probably talk about the 15th anniversary of Attack of the Clones. Not 15th, 25th. Sorry. 20, right? 25, yeah, because 25 was just Phantom Menace. Damn. Is that right? 2002? No, we still have time. That'll be 23 years. We have Force Awakens 10-year anniversary next year. Oh, no. It's 20 years for Revenge of the Sith next year. That's what it is. So we'll probably talk about that. 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith next year. And, of course, the 10-year anniversary of Force Awakens. So that stuff is, stuff we'll celebrate. Kind of like we did with the Phantom Menace 25th anniversary. All that kind of stuff. Okay, let's talk about Skeleton Crew trailer. I watched it once. I'm feeling pretty good about this show. I'll tell you, one thing I really enjoyed about it is the song choice. So if you haven't watched it, I would suggest going to watch it. It looks like very people say Stranger Things, Goonies, Amblin, Spielberg type thing. 80s. It definitely has that vibe. But it also, so they definitely played Major Tom as the background song. And I know some people might not like that, but I think one thing that really sells it, I think it was in Huttese as well. So that was really cool. Because it's a familiar song, but it sounds very Star Wars when you throw in the Huttese. So that worked for me. Like if you're going to use that in a trailer like that, which we usually don't get, we usually get more of the orchestral stuff in trailers. So having a trailer that had like a rock song from the 80s, but sung in Huttese really worked for me. The poster looks great as well. If you're listening to the audio podcast, over on the video version, I'm going to try to throw up a picture of the poster. It was a fun, it was a good poster. So this was when they do this trailer? Friday. So Friday they did the poster and the trailer. We have, Jude Law front and center. We have the kids at the bottom. We have the villain. I don't know. I don't think we really have any of the villains on here. We know the villains are the pirates from Mando season 3. I think. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. It's kind of like there's definitely a head of like the droid or something that they make out in here. I don't know. It's kind of odd. Okay. But yeah, I like that it says a Star Wars adventure. And it felt very adventure film, stuff like that. I thought that was really fun, really cool, the way that they did that. But that's all I can really say about it. Like, it looks fun, looks great. We'll see how it actually turns out, right? I was big hyped, right, on the Acolyte, and the show turned out fine. I think my biggest problem with it is that it was just fine. The first 5 episodes I really dug. I don't want to keep going back to this, but we haven't really talked about the cancellation that much. We kind of talked about it at the end of the lightsaber draft, if you stuck around that long. The show just had cost so much. And I think for me, where I kind of land on it is like, it was fine. I don't hate any Star Wars. Those first 5 episodes are great. Like the 5th episode in particular is. The 5th episode in particular, really, really great. They could have taken the show anywhere after that. And where they kind of took it after that, it's not really where I was a fan of, especially the finale with, having the sisters, like, having May give up herself for Osha kind of taking her role. Osha killing people like Master Soul. I don't know. None of it really felt like I was supposed to root for May and Osha until they try to make it seem that way, and it just didn't ring true to me. We talked about it a lot in our post-mortem of the Acolyte, and we talked about it a lot in that end of the lightsaber draft, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but that show gets canceled. However you want to say it, okay? Like, I know some people that are big Acolyte fans will say, well, it was only supposed to have 1 season. It was never actually canceled. I thought that going in as well. But the way that they approached the press afterwards of like, I have ideas for more seasons and stuff like that, like, it made it seem like they wanted more seasons. And then the way that the show ended didn't actually seem like it ended. Right? Like, you have May over there with like the Jedi and the Republic now. You have not remembering anything. You have Osha going off with Kymir. whatever. It's like it didn't really feel that resolved to me at the end of the day. Some of the characters are resolved, um, but it seemed like they were definitely trying to set up more how much the show was costing, and then probably the reaction, and just the fact that it wasn't being watched. I wouldn't even say like the hatred from that sect of the fandom. I think it was, like the viewership not being there, and why spend 200 some $1 million on a show that it's not going to recoup it, right? Um, and look, I know Disney has money, and I'm not saying like they couldn't have made a second season. It's just like financially, when you're beholden to shareholders, they're just not going to do it. Unfortunately, maybe we get more in a book. I think the tie-ins for those prequel books for like Yord and Jeki and those characters, I believe, are starting to come out soon. But that's kind of where I stand on it. It was disappointing a bit. This show, I'm kind of going in with lower expectations for Skeleton Crew. I'm not expecting to be blown away the way I was about, like The Acolyte. The Acolyte I wasn't just hype on it because it's a Jedi show. I love the High Republic. Reading the books, spending time in that era, characters like Vernestra, that should have been right up my alley. It should have. So I'm kind of going in with a little bit less expectations for Skeleton Crew. So I think I'll actually be rewarded for that. I do think I'm going to enjoy the show. I mean, look, I've liked all the shows. Obi-Wan, people crap on. Book of Boba Fett, people crap on. But I like them. I like the sequels, all that stuff. So I'm not too worried about it. It is John Watts, who I know sometimes his Spider-Man movies are controversial for whatever reason. They're very successful movies that are critically acclaimed and fans like them. But, there's that sect of the internet that's like, John Watts is, blah, blah, blah. And I am looking forward to Skeleton Crew. I think John Watts is going to bring some cool stuff over to Star Wars. This, they did say, is planned to be a one-off. But if it's successful, I guess they could always make another season. But we'll see how these characters fit in. Like, are they going to be in the Dave Filoni movie, right? That connects some of these characters. Who knows? Speaking of movies, there was news that Stephen Knight, who was working on the script of the Rey movie, is potentially off the project. I think this came from Puck News, and I'm kind of waiting to see what's going on, because I know Daisy Ridley had come out saying that there were some positive updates coming forward a day before this, or after this news broke. She said that. So who actually knows what's going on? It could even just be being spun like he finished the script and is done with it and is moving on, or maybe he turned it into the script, they didn't like it, and they're going to get another writer. Like, it could be that. I'm not too worried about it, because in all honesty, because the report said, if this is true, it's having trouble meeting that December 2026 date. And I say good. We do not need another movie in 2026. We just don't. It seems very what was the word I'm searching for? Confusing, or like Bob Iger doesn't know what to do. Because he originally had this plan. He originally had this plan in starting in 2015 with Force Awakens. Every year would have a Star Wars movie. Every year. and they were originally going to be in May, but J.J. Abrams asked for December because he needed more time, and then they just started slotting them in December, right? And they were doing well. Then they tried to get back into the May timeframe. So after Last Jedi, they go ahead and throw Solo out to the wolves in May. And I do like take issue with, I know I saw a tweet months ago saying like Solo was hung out to dry because of a midsummer release. It was a Memorial Day weekend release. That's a big deal. Movies do that all the time. That's a good weekend release. Where it was maybe more hung out to dry was that the marketing wasn't as good, and the fact that it was only 6 months after The Last Jedi, which I love The Last Jedi, but if we're being honest, very divisive film. And I knew it when I saw it. I walked out like, oh, I see why people may not like this movie, especially the Luke stuff. I kind of walked out saying, I think I know people may not like this. I like it. And I told Logan, this is famous, by the way. I told Logan, I think you're going to like it. I liked it. He did not like the movie. He's come around on a little bit. Still not a big fan of it, but he's rewatched it and said it's better than he remembered. So we don't need a movie just 6 months after Mandalorian and Grogu. We don't. And in fact, what I mean by like Bob Iger doesn't know what he's going to do is like he wanted these movies every year. And then once the diminishing return came from Solo, and then you get Rise of Skywalker, which still did well, but not as well as some of the other movies, they took a break. They said, we're going to take a break and figure it out. And since then, we got mostly Star Wars on the small screen. Mando Season 2, Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Acolyte, Andor, Mando Season 3, Ahsoka. All these shows. And now, of course, then you had people being like, that were complaining originally about having movies every year. We're then complaining about Star Wars should only be in the movie screen. Why are we wasting time on TV shows? Well, then they're like, all right, we're going to do 3 new movies. A Rey movie. First Jedi, right? 20,000 years ago, whatever. And Dave Filoni's film. Then, earlier this year, I think it was in January, they come out and say, hold up, we're adding another movie to the slate, Mandalorian and Grogu. And that this is getting released first. And they're going into production soon. And they did. They started filming earlier this year. But then they decide, oh, we're just shifting the Rey movie 6 months. We're still going to do 2 movies in 2026, and we're going to have one in 2027, like right after that. Why? You already know that didn't work. This isn't Marvel. This isn't the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel can get away with this stuff more than Star Wars. Because I think Marvel has so many different feels, right? Like, you can do, like, Iron Man movies are different than Captain America movies. Iron Man has, like, the technology stuff. Captain America's more war and, like, doing the right thing, super soldier stuff. And they're very different to Spider-Man, who's more relatable, juggling real life and his superhero stuff. And that's different than Thor, who's up in space taking on this stuff. And that's different than Guardians, which are found family in space. Like, all of these things can feel very different. That's different than Doctor Strange is focused on magic world, right? And doing magic stuff. The Star Wars stuff can be different, but so far they haven't really done that. So will they do that? I don't know. Can the Rey movie be really different enough from Mandalorian and Grogu that 6 months later you're showing up? I think that's a better mix than Last Jedi and then seeing a prequel Han Solo movie, which I love Solo. I'm actually a big proponent for Solo. But people were not really wanting to see Harrison Ford recast. So, people were saying Solo is Harrison Ford. How do you even do that? And I think Alden Ehrenreich did a great job in Solo. He did a fantastic job. But I think some people weren't willing to give it that chance because of that. He was taking over a huge mantle. Now, you're having what you would have instead is Mandalorian Grogu, who are box office on Disney Plus. They're huge. Grogu moves merch like no tomorrow, right? It was the biggest hit that Disney has ever had, other than like Force Awakens, was Mandalorian season 1 and 2. They were huge. So I think that movie will do well. Then you will have the Rey movie, which is a continuation from episode 9, which some people will be like, do I really want that? And then some people are going to be the kids that grew up seeing The Force Awakens. They're 10 years older going to see this movie. They'll do it, right? I think those people will show up no problem. Same way Revenge of the Sith fans showed up to Force Awakens. But, and I think also you'll have the possibility that the hardcore fans that maybe didn't like the sequel trilogy as well might say this is to take Lor San Tekka's line. This is beginning to set things right. This will begin to make things right, right? I think some people would look at this and be all right, now is your time to kind of redeem Rise of Skywalker. Which, if you go back and listen, that was the first movie we covered on here, and if you can stand the bad audio quality, my mic was broken or something. It wasn't working right. I enjoyed Rise of Skywalker quite a bit. Shocker, right? The guy that loves everything Star Wars liked a Star Wars movie. But that's kind of where I stand on that right now is 6 months might still be too close. The only thing they have going for it is that I think these are more, I don't want to say more beloved characters because Han Solo is beloved. But what I mean is like, it's going to be Daisy Ridley playing Rey. It's not somebody else playing Han Solo, at which people were immediately turned off by. Plus the troubled production, plus the vitriol that people had for Last Jedi really was a bad recipe for Solo. Maybe this will be better in that regard. But to do that, they need a script. So we'll find out what's going on with the Stephen Knight stuff. There was also, I think the same person reported Mandalorian and Grogu had already been wrapped. That's come out to be false. So who knows how right they are about the Stephen Knight stuff. Who knows? But Mandalorian and Grogu, I think, is supposed to continue filming into this month, is from what I read, I think, on one of the sites. So if that's true, they're going to have tons of post time. They're going to have tons of post time. This movie's going to be in the can. Like, this will be great. It'll be a movie that's going to have no problem hitting that May 2026 date. And I love that. Which means we'll be able to plan to be in that theater May 2026 and see Mandalorian and Grogu. Speaking of Mandalorian, they've continued releasing Blu-Rays, 4K Blu-Rays of the Disney Plus shows. Ahsoka Season 1 is coming to Blu-ray December 3rd, I believe it is, and so is Mandalorian Season 3. Where is Book of Boba Fett? That's what people are asking. Where's... is that the only show missing right now? Yeah. Yeah. Well, Acolyte, obviously, too. But, they can just do those as another two. And I think they will. I wouldn't worry about out of order stuff. They've, the Disney shows have been coming out of order. Like, they're already putting out Loki Season 2. That's the Marvel show that's coming out with that. And same thing with Hawkeye. But Hawkeye was like 2021, right? So that's coming out 3 years later. Originally, people were like, why did they skip Hawkeye to put out whatever show they had put out before. Like they've been jumping around. Moon Knight, right? I think Moon Knight came out before Hawkeye on Blu-ray, but Hawkeye came out first. Hawkeye's Christmas based, and they're trying to get that out in time for the Christmas season, I think. So that makes sense. They're just kind of doing whatever, I think. They're just kind of grabbing whatever show they want and like, okay, so they did the first 2 seasons of Mando, so they're going to put out season 3 of Mando. Like, that's how it is. Ahsoka, they're going to get that out because I maybe would have thought they would have waited closer to Ahsoka season 2, but that's not coming out until 2026, right? So I think they're probably like, okay, just get it out. It was a new show, like it's a newer show. People will still buy Book of Boba Fett when it comes out. They better release that one because that has when Mando and Grogu reunite. So that needs to fit in the middle of season 1 and 2 and 3 on my shelf. So I need that. Give me that. That's what I say. The issue I have with this is the price point. I don't know if this is part of the new Sony deal. If you don't remember, a few months ago, the last batch of shows that were produced by Disney on Blu-ray was the Mandalorian. No, not Mandalorian. Andor and Obi-Wan. And Falcon Winter Soldier and Moon Knight. Those were already in the works before they made a deal where Sony is going to produce the discs. And I'm glad to see that Sony's continuing this. I'm glad to see they got the same artist for the steelbooks. They kept the same font on the number. These are going to match. And that was my biggest concern. But have you seen the price points for these? Luckily on Walmart, Mandalorian Season 3 and Ahsoka are in line with what the other price was, $49. The other ones were like $44, $45. All right, that's fine. The Marvel shows? Loki Season 2, $75? Hawkeye Season 1, $75? What are we doing? At this point, I wanted to have both all Marvel, all Disney, all Star Wars shows on Blu-ray. At this rate, I'm going to probably have to drop the Marvel ones because there's so many more of those shows. And if they're all at $75 going forward, that's kind of insane. I might just have to get Loki Season 2 since I already have Season 1 and say that's it. I'm done. Until Daredevil, because I'll buy Daredevil. But, for Star Wars, I need to have them all. That is my fault. But right now, their price is cheaper on Walmart. If you go on Amazon, it's still $75. But Walmart has it cheaper. Yeah, that's insane. I don't know if it's because Sony took over. I don't know if it's because they've now figured out that they can jack up steelbook prices. Or maybe this is a sign that they're going to do the steelbooks first and then they're going to release normal discs. Normal cased ones and they'll be cheaper. I don't know. I kind of hope so. I'd be fine without getting the steelbooks if I can save money. Like, I'll do steelbooks for the Star Wars ones I already have, so that way, like, Mando matches, But here's the thing. We are looking at the case of most likely Star Wars not getting many TV shows going forward. That's what I see, right? They moved Mando Season 4 to being a movie. I don't know if we're getting Mando Season 4 after the movie. Because then we get Dave Filoni's movie. And at that point, it probably ties up most of these people's story. Maybe they can then do a Mando Season 4. Maybe. We're getting Ahsoka Season 2. I do think that that'll probably wrap up the Ahsoka, Ezra, Sabine stuff. And, they'll probably show up in the Dave Filoni movie. Right? Andor's ending with Season 2. Acolyte does not get another season. Book of Boba Fett's not getting another season. Obi-Wan? Maybe? But so far, not getting another season. What does that leave us with other than the animated series? It leaves us with no live-action shows going forward. Doesn't mean that they won't create one, but if they create one, It's probably going to be one that can run for multiple seasons under a budget, and probably not going to be costing as much as the Acolyte and Andor cost, which are hundreds of millions of dollars. There's a reason they came up with the volume. It was to try to make Star Wars shows cheap. And then, like, the 2 shows that don't use the volume are so expensive. But look, so I don't know what it is, but these price points are insane. I'm glad the Star Wars ones are so low right now on Walmart. They're on my Christmas list. I'm hoping I get them because I need them. The exclusive bonus features, or just even having on my shelf if my Wi-Fi goes out, if I want to watch them on 4K without having buffering or bad internet issues at times, I can do that. And that's the plan, is to get those 2 shows. But hopefully they keep doing it. And I think at a certain point, we're going to have less Star Wars shows. So my collection will probably stay complete at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do a show like Star Wars Underworld that George Lucas was working on. Not the same thing, but something like that, where they can maybe create a set that they can use multiple times. And have like limited sets, and I don't know, focusing on different characters. I think Andor could have been a cheap show if they didn't. I don't know. I think Andor had a possibility of being a cheap show, but my main point is, like, they have, we've had Star Trek shows, we've had Stargate shows where they would do 20 some episodes a year, and they had, the main ship that they would spend their time on. And the budget wouldn't be insane. So maybe a show like that going forward. Marvel got it under control with Agatha. Agatha was actually a very cheap show, their cheapest show. And it was very profitable for them because it did really well. It was also a critical hit. It was also a hit with the fans. And, if you look at the Witch's Road set, it's probably it's probably able to be used in certain ways since it was all practical, but they could probably move certain things to make it look like another part of the road, and keep using the same stuff. So it becomes very effective that way. Star Wars needs something like that. We're just using the volume again. And us as fans needing to get over it. I'm sorry, get over it. Get over how it looks. I think the volume still looks great, but there's just this issue where people think it doesn't look like, I'm so used to seeing Star Wars on film. This doesn't look like film. But yeah, like, sometimes you just have to work with what you got. That's my opinion on it. Okay, and we'll start wrapping up the show here, but Ahsoka season 2 supposedly rumored to start filming in the spring, and I would assume that comes out in 2026. Maybe that'd be cool if it's spring of 2026 before Mandalorian and Grogu. That'd be cool. Could be also Mandalorian. It could be after Mandalorian and Grogu as well, but we'll see how that plays out. And then, of course, just some fun gaming news. If you ever play Jedi Power Battles, they're coming out with it. I think they just released it remastered on the new consoles. It's the game that came out around the time of Episode 1. I've talked about it on here before. And I think they had Mace Windu with a blue lightsaber, but they now updated it where you can use either the blue lightsaber or screen accurate pink, purple, all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. But that game is out now, I believe. So I'll see if I can maybe get that game sometime again, because that was a fun game for me. Okay, well, that is that. We'll wrap it up here. Thank you all for watching or listening to this episode. Like I said, later this month, you'll be getting Tales of the Jedi, revisiting that. I did an episode on that when it first came out, but this will be probably a little bit more in depth. I'll have somebody to bounce ideas off of. It'll be Logan's first time watching it. And then we're going to pivot over to Skeleton Crew discussions in December. Through the end of that show, I believe it's going to be 7 weeks because they're doing a 2-episode premiere on December 3rd. Then after that, in January-ish, we're going to be starting our Bad Batch binge weekly releases, where each week we'll take a look at a batch of episodes of Bad Batch. It'll be Logan's first time watching it, my second time watching it. We'll catch him up on Bad Batch. And then probably sometime in the middle of that or after that, Andor Season 2 will come out. I'll find somebody to cover the show with me, because I know I don't think Ron has seen Andor, because he wasn't really interested in that world of Star Wars. And I think Logan wasn't big on Andor. So I'm going to have to find somebody to discuss Andor with on the podcast, because it is the highest quality of the Star Wars shows. My favorite is Mando, just because I love, Mandalorians. I love Grogu. I love lightsabers. I love all that stuff. But if we're looking at like what's the best written, best directed, best produced show that Star Wars has ever put out, it's Andor. And I'm really looking forward to season 2. And I really want to go back and watch season 1 again. And I have it on Blu-ray. We can sit back and watch Andor on Blu-ray. And that's probably how I'll rewatch it as we build up to the second season of that. So that'll cover like 12 weeks, unless they do like a 3-episode premiere like they did last time, which I'm assuming they will. So probably 9 weeks, something like that. Because they have a lot of Marvel shows. And like I said at the top of the show, we have a Marvel podcast. And we're going to be talking, of course, Captain America Brave New World. The movie comes out early next year. We have Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, What If Season 3, Daredevil, Ironheart, Wonder Man, Marvel Zombies, Fantastic Four. The movie comes out. Thunderbolts comes out. We got a lot of stuff to cover over on the Marvel Pod. So make sure you check that out as well. All right. Thank you at Podawakens on all of our social media. Thank you all for watching and listening. We will catch you next time.